morning. I have picked some bay, and as I walk towards the camera, it's giving me a little message. I think we'll close that. It is a frosty morning here in Kent, -2 degrees when I checked my phone, and I don't know whether you can hear that some birdsong in the pergola up above me. We have some sparrows cheeping away. So I think this is the beauty, isn't it, of being out in the garden and taking a moment. Not only can you see my background changing from week to week, month to month, and season to season, but it's also got quite a nice calming, meditative effect on you as you just sit or stand, relax, and just take in the moment. Good morning, Joan. How are you this morning? So it is February, the month of love, and I am just trying to think whether I could make that was Valentine in style. So I've actually just cut down some bay. Now our bay tree went right down to the ground, and the beast from the east, when was that? Was that 2018, 16, 17, 18, not quite sure. And we thought we were going to lose the whole tree, but it has now grown back up to an unmanageable, about 4 metres high. So I can trim from the bottom, but when I came to cut these longer lengths, I was having to reach up into the tree, sort of bend it back, and then hold on to one piece and cut, and then quickly hold on to the next. Good morning, Lisa. How are you this morning? So nice and frosty. I have layered up with gloves. I've got about 3 jumpers on. I've got a new pair of hard-wearing boots on. So we're all systems go. And then while I was, you know what I always do? My husband is the gardener, and he always has this little adage that I can take anything from the garden as long as he can't spot where it's come from. And lo and behold, I get out my newly sharpened secateurs, and you'll know all about that if you've been watching my Facebook Lives. I can hear this tip, tip, tip on the window. Tip, 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 tip. And I thought, what's she saying? Yes, Linda, it is freezing this morning. Really cold. Cold with you too as well, I expect. And he was giving me the old, the hand signals. And I decided, because I was originally cutting with my floristry scissors, and although they're really hard wearing, they weren't up to the job, so I had to come indoors to get my secateurs. And I said, what were you trying to say to me? And he was saying, instead of stretching up to the top of the tree, could I cut at the bottom of the bush? Because we've got a Japanese maple at the bottom, and it is becoming smothered with the bay. So he said, you might as well do 2 jobs. Cut for your video, whilst at the same time doing something useful for him in the garden. So here we go. So ladies, I know it's ladies watching at the moment. Hello gents, if you're watching later on today. Today is the first session of the brand new series, or the one-off class on Zoom flower class. So I am going to teach you how to teach your own flower arranging classes. And perhaps if you're a crafter, someone who's creative, who's also thinking of earning a bit of money on the side, you might be interested in those classes as well, because there's a little bit of a crossover. So today is 12 o'clock GMT. We will be going through a checklist of things to think about when you take a booking for class, and also things you need to think about before you pack and go to the class. And depending how that goes, I've got a whole series of other classes I'm going to teach, but it's going to be one of those classes where, depending on the questions you ask me, which I will answer in the live video, I may well sort of get the course to take a slightly different direction to take on board the concerns that you have. So watch this space if you're interested in learning more about class. And on the subject of that, did you catch the video that I posted yesterday at 3 o'clock? And that was actually a live version of me teaching a flower class. So it takes you right from how do you log on to flower class. So if you are slightly scared of Zoom, I know loads and loads of people used Zoom during the pandemic, but equally lots of people were a little bit scared of using it. So I have done a video, and the first 5 minutes of that video is showing you what you do, from me sending you the link in the email, to what pops up on your phone, to what the buttons mean across the bottom of your phone, and how to participate in the Zoom flower class, and then I then take you through the whole class. So you will learn how to make a vase arrangement using your January greenery, and you'll see what it's like. So I do a little bit at the front, a little bit at the back, and then the middle bit is what my Zoom flower class is all about. I can see from the comments there that Linda has watched it. And Linda, that is what I do when I'm teaching my classes, my traditional let me teach you something about flower arranging class. It's just like that. So what happens after the class is I record the class, and then that middle bit of the video, so without me with the introduction and without the chat at the end, that is what you've got to get sent. So it's normally about half an hour, 40 minutes long, and that means if you can't join any of my Zoom classes live, you can watch the recording and get the value out of it. And of course, if you did watch live, you can rewatch the video if there's something that you've forgotten about. The advantage, though, of joining class live is, again, you get to ask me questions in the chat box, and I always do a live Q&A at the end, which doesn't get recorded. It just means that you can have a bit of that one-to-one attention. So, yeah, come and join me next time. I hope you enjoy it. So I have got my rustling bay leaves here. I thought, Valentine's Day around the corner, can I make a heart-shaped wreath? Now, heart shapes are always really difficult to make because you can sort of do the one ear going round that way and then the other ear going round that way, but of course as soon as you let go, you just end up with a circle. And sometimes you'll see, if people have done a homemade heart shape, that they'll have the two sides here, but then in order to hold the sort of the rounded bit at the top, the sort of the cleavage bit at the top down, they then have a sort of central sticks going through, so you end up with your heart shape but actually with an upright in the middle of it. And I've set my challenge, can I make a heart shape form without having that really annoying visual bit of the really heavy uprights in the middle? So shall we have a go? So for this, I have got some wires. So my plan is, these are really quite chunky wires, and if you're into your flower arranging, you'll be interested to know, I think they are 1.5 millimetre wires. So normally in floristry, we use a 0.56 if we were making a buttonhole. You've heard me talk about a 0.71 wire or a 0.90 wire to wire a pine cone, but these are a 1.5, I believe. So they are quite sturdy. And if you didn't have these wires, what you could do is, where I've got one wire here, you could take 2 or 3 of your finer wires and just bundle them together to try and get the strength. Or if you've got a metal coat hanger, from the dry cleaners, you could cut off the hook with a pair of wire cutters and lengthen the wire out, and that would give you a stronger wire. And I think probably the coat hanger is even thicker and stronger than these wires, and it might actually be the better option. But I haven't been to the dry cleaners for a long time, so I don't have any of those sturdy wires. So I've got this as my basic support, and then I have got good old mossing wire, and that is the wire, if you make your Christmas dories, that will be the wire that you would have attached your moss to your wreath frame, or if you went moss free, you would have attached your, I use conifer sometimes as an alternative to moss, just to pad out the shape of the wreath. So that is what you'll be familiar with. Much easier to make this with a never-ending piece of wire, or it could be string if that's what you wanted to use. But no good really having short lengths, because no sooner have you wrapped a little bit, then you've got to attach another little bit. So if you can have it on the reel, that is really, really helpful. Can you see how cold it is? It really is quite chilly out here this morning. So the plan is to strengthen. See the bay is quite pliable. I have got some chunkier stems that I think I might need to cut up. The idea is that I'm going to lash my bay onto my lengths of wire and then fashion that round into a circle, and fingers crossed that that is going to be secure. And then once I've got a circle, I'm going to shape it so I get the rounded bit at the top and then the pointed bit at the end. So let's see how that's going to go. So I will bring the camera down, and now I am going to have to take my gloves off. It's going to be really cold. So let's get going. So lots of, and what I might do just to help, do I need to trim these down? These ones are, yes, Lisa, it is cold out here this morning, but actually it's quite nice because I know as soon as I go indoors, it's going to be so lovely and warm that I'll appreciate the warmth of the living room. And I sometimes, you know, it's just nice to have that contrast in senses, isn't it? And as some of you may know, I also like going swimming in the cold as well. So I think I've probably got, you know, a little bit of a love of the cold. I think with it being cold, you can always make yourself warmer. What I've done there, I've just twist and tied my wire on just so it holds to start. But of course, when it's too hot, you can't, you know, totally strip off. So I get too hot in the summer, but I'm quite happy to be cold in the winter. So I am going to be crushing these leaves. This isn't going to be a pretty wreath. Yes, you're right, Lisa, that cold water swim is really invigorating. I'm purely using my greenery, my robust bay leaves, as a means of greening up. So I've started wiring here, but this bit is loose. I'm not going to go down to the bottom because I want a chunkiness of green. So I'm going to start overlaying now. So this is where my secateurs come in. I can start to snip off my next pieces and overlay those on the top. And you just need to make sure, number one, don't have too much of the string or the wire reeled out. And number two, don't get in a tangle. So these leaves are going to crease. So if you are somebody who wants things that are nice and neat and tidy, this may well not be the project for you. I'm going for something that is green and heart-shaped, not something that is, you know, a Christmas dory version of something that is heart-shaped. If you wanted to do that, you would need to use a pre-formed heart shape and then have much shorter sections of greenery as you would do to make a dory. So I'm getting my bits and pieces in there. I've come to the end now. Can you see that little bit of wire there? So I'm going to add in another bit of wire. I'm just going to slide that up. Might just try and bind those two pieces together so they don't fall apart. And then continue on. So I'm getting this green wand really, and what I would need to make sure when I've got to the end of the green is it's the same thickness throughout, so I don't want to end up with some skinny bits and some fatter bits. Oops. I'm just thinking I should save myself some bay leaves. I'm going to sort of be making a bolognese sort of sauce for tea tonight, so it might be a good idea to use something fresh from the garden for that. So my fingers are getting quite cold, but it's nice to have the sun. I can see a little bit of sun glinting on the table, so that's quite nice to see. So I've got some woody bits here. I'm going to cut those out. End of the wire again here, and I'm sort of visualising now, once I bring that round, the size. I think it's my third wire going in, and my wires are quite long. They must be probably from here to here, that's 40 centimetres I would guess, but it will depend on the, you know, what you've got at home, because you don't want to be going out and buying anything special for this, and how big you want your frame to be. So maybe you might want to do this really small. Do you remember at Christmas time I showed you a sort of similar technique, and I think I used conifer and did little rounds that I put on my little sort of napkin rings. I'm going to cut these down because they're getting a bit skinny. What I might do is cut those down and then add them back in. just so I don't lose the consistent size. And then a little bit more. These are on thinner stems. You don't want the stems to be too chunky because you want this to bend round. It's got some curves and a nice point at the end that are needed. So if you've got pieces of bay that are too chunky, they're not going to do the job. So let's have a look. Do I need to add one more piece in? I think I probably do need to add one more piece in. So this is my 4th wire. I'm putting it down at the bottom, and then I've just sort of tied them together. I've just taken my wire around to tie them together there. So let's go. I think I've cut myself far too much bay, but I was doing a gardening job at the same time. So the leftover bits of bay could either become the base of my next flower arrangement, and that's a really good tip. Do you remember the January vase arrangement I did for you in the garden? That is still going strong. I just need to, every so often top it up with water, but it is a really good base for, if I was to buy some tulips or buy some daffodils, I could just slide them down into that vase and I'm all ready and set to go. My fingers are getting really, really cold now. So I think probably that is enough for the moment. Let's show you what I have done. So I have got this, it almost looks like a garland here. And at this stage, I could do one more length. I could take my wire and go back down the other way, or I could go round. And if I just wanted this outline to be green, I could go one more time just to constrain everything so it didn't look like the individual leaves. I could just have it as a, as if you'd done a crayon heart shape. But at the moment, I think I'm probably going to leave it like that. So I need to join it together. Again, some of my stems here are just looking a little bit chunky, and I have actually just got this leftover bit of wire at the end. I didn't design it like that, but as it's there, I might just thread the 2 bits of wire together so that they've interlocked, and then because I didn't ever let go there, I can go over here. So I'm actually joining the beginning and the end together. A little bit of wire there, get that hidden out of view like that. So I've got quite a large round shape. So the reason why I bound it onto that thick wire, I didn't use a piece of rope or anything like that, because I need some sturdiness to it. So I'm not going to cut off my wire here yet, because I may want to go round one more time, or when it's finished I may decide to add in a bit of greenery to bulk up a little bit and to try and get rid of some of this green here. So I need to create that classic shape of the heart. So it's going to be a little bit of manipulation here. So let's go. So it needs to be a sort of up and over, and then diagonally opposite it needs to be the point. So I'm going to sort of get those areas in first. I need to put that down at the bottom. So I've got myself a good point at the bottom, and then I need to bend in the section at the top. So I would say to have a really crisp point at the base and an exaggerated curve at the top, and that will give you a shape. If you go too rounded at the bottom, well, you just don't get that definition. And I would say if you don't do enough of a dip at the top, again, you don't get the definition, and you'll end up with something that just looks like a misshapen circle. But look, it definitely looks heart-shaped, but I think probably I do need to add in a little bit more greenery. It doesn't really bear close scrutiny. So that would give me my base. And yes, I will probably go around one more time, perhaps with a top dressing of smaller pieces of my bay, just so I can show those off. So I could do when I do my bindings, just binding over on the tips of my bay. Let me show you what I mean, rather than binding over the whole of the length. So what I could do is get some little pieces like this in my hand. So it's a good way of using up all the short sections. So I've got 3 pieces here, bundle them together in my hand, and then this bit here that doesn't have any leaf, that is what I could bind on. So let me see, I would start there. No, I'm just trying to work out how I would do that. I'm going to start at the bottom. Because the wreath goes like that, instead of having a continuous pattern of the foliage going round like you would with a circle, I think what I'm going to do is to have the tufty bits going that way and the tufty bits going that way. And in order for that to happen, I'll need to start actually at the base of the wreath and then work my way back to the top. So in fact, what I'll do, Joan's asking whether I'm going to leave it like this or decorate it with flowers. I am going to leave it like this, Joan, because I don't have any flowers. So it's working with what we've got, not what I wish I had. So I've tied that off there. And then I will tie on at the bottom. And this will dry, of course, so it'll give a little bit of longevity. If you had, dried flowers, you could add those. Of course, you could have fresh, but of course, there's no medium for the fresh flowers to retain their freshness. So, if you were doing, if you were adding, red roses in for Valentine's Day, that it would only, if you put your flowers in, it would only last for that day looking perky fresh, and then the roses would dry in position. Do you want to see what I'm doing there? So I've tied off at the bottom and I have tied on at the top. Let's see if I can bring you down. So my little bundle of green that I got. So I'm starting at the bottom and I am putting the bushy bits of greenery at the base here, and then I'm working my way up to the top. So this time binding on really tightly, so I've gone over twice, 3 times, 4 times over the stem, and that leaves me with a little bit of unsightly wire, but that gets covered up by the next bit. So again, these pieces here, they're the thumb to forefinger length, and I will put the tufty leaves over the wire of the fastenings before and do the same thing. So a little bit of a bundle, lower leaves, in order that I've got something to somewhere to tie. A little bit of a bundle, bare stems here. Put the fluffy heads over the exposed wire of the previous placement, and then work your way up. So the more greenery I add, and by definition the more wire I add, everything becomes much firmer and more secure. So it'll probably take me a little while to do this, and I may not finish it today. I may just decide to leave this on my kitchen table until it warms up later today, or until the fancy takes me that I want to do something else, which is the great thing about flower arranging and being creative with plant material. You don't have to do it all in one go and put yourself under pressure. I could have stopped with that, the basic green outline. But the more you add, it does look better and it looks more intentional. So the first version with the long stems just gave a very sort of naive, a very natural looking shape. And this one you can see here as I go, it's working up into a much chunkier base. So shall we leave it there? Because I think I need to sit down actually and work over this, because it's going to make my back ache. But you can see that it is reasonably easy to make with just some flexible stems and a really sturdy underwire. Exaggerate your dip at the front and give yourself a really good point at the bottom, and you too can have a very garden inspired heart shape that would look lovely on garden shed or on your front door. So Lisa's saying a nice arrangement for indoors or outdoors. Yes. So I do like hanging dories up indoors. And of course, as Lisa says, the smell of the bay, it just feels glorious. Linda's telling me to go indoors and to warm up, and I think I will do that very thing. So thank you for joining me live today. I really appreciate it when you take time out of your day to spend time with me. If you're not already on my mailing list, if you comment mailing list underneath the video, I will send you a link and you can sign up to my mailing list. So I email out once a week general news of what's coming up from my kitchen table to yours. And if you want to chat live again, I'm on my Facebook group at 12 noon. So that's flouse.world, and there's a link to that in the notes underneath the video. So I shall say goodbye, and for those of you who are joining me on Zoom at 12 o'clock, I will see you at 12. And see you next week. Bye everyone.